Yeah. We're here to be the encouragers, the unconditional cheerleaders and supporters.
Grandma. I think that's absolutely spot on, and I would add words to that like infuse and inspire.
Yeah.
Our pastors and friends, Clive and Sally Haddy.
I'm Sally, this is my husband Clive, and we've actually got 10 grandchildren with an 11th on the way.
What would you say is the role of grandparents?
I think grandparents are particularly important. Well, I can give you a variety of perspectives. Let's start with the Bible. In the Bible, God is known as the God of 3 generations. He's not just the God of Abraham, but he actually calls himself the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
And he names himself after 3 generations, including the grandparents. So grandparents are key in that. And in some senses, they're like the founding generation. They lay a foundation. Grandparents can be founders, and it doesn't matter what's happened before, what background we've come from. If it wasn't brilliant in our family background, we can start a whole new, if you like, revival movement in our own lives that we can then pass on to our children and their children.
Sure. There's a reference in Proverbs 13, and it talks about grandparents leaving a legacy for their grandchildren. And you would think it might say parents leaving a legacy for their children, but it talks about grandparents leaving a legacy for their grandchildren. And it's easy to think when you hear the word legacy that it's just talking about money or finances or something. And I do think there's a place where, as grandparents, we can be generous and supportive with finances, and maybe we have a little more spare than we had when our own children were young. But I definitely think it means a spiritual legacy as well. I think there's a legacy to be left for our grandchildren in spiritual things, and I think that's something that's very an important part of the grandparent role.
There's a great example in the Bible when Paul comes across Timothy on his missionary journey. He takes Timothy with him because he's a young man that's well reported of. But later you actually see what's going on in that situation, that Paul talks about his grandmother and his mother both getting the scriptures in front of him and passing on that spiritual inheritance. Grandma and mum, together, they worked in Timothy's life. So when Paul comes along and meets him, it's not just suddenly, oh, here's this good-looking, teachable young man. He's got a spiritual history behind him, and that when Paul's message comes, all of that that's been inherited, or all that that's been invested in him, suddenly comes into being, comes into play. So Paul is preaching to the choir almost. He's preaching to the converted. When he gets there, his grandma and his mum have done the work to lay that foundation in his life, so that Paul can then say, this is a young man I can take with me. So that's the role of grandparents in Scripture, and I think in life in general.
I think if I had to have one sentence to sum up the grandparent role, certainly for me, I think we're here to encourage. We're here to be the encouragers, the unconditional cheerleaders and supporters. Grandma.
I think that's absolutely spot on, and I would add words to that like infuse and inspire. I think the great thing about grandparents is they're not threatening. When somebody sees a grandma walking down the street, they don't feel threatened by them. They feel, if anything, she's going to open her handbag and give you some sweeties or some pocket money or something like that. Well, I think you're very good at that. But, grandparents can be incredibly influential at the right moment. There are lots of accounts where grandmas and grandpas get into situation because people don't see them as a threat.
I think it's all these things. It's about encouraging, but it's also about believing in them. Grandparents should unconditionally believe in their grandchildren.
Yes, they should.
We're the one people that they can know are going to be for them and on their side. Without questions and whatever. And parents do sometimes have to make hard calls, don't they? Whereas we don't have to do that as grandparents. So we can just be the sweet, wonderful, cheering them on.
How many points did you get? We got grandparents are founders. They lay foundation. Grandparents leave a spiritual legacy. Grandparents are encouragers. Grandparents are unconditional cheerleaders. Grandparents enthuse. Grandparents inspire. Number 7, grandparents are believers. They believe in their grandchildren. Did you find these 7 points? If you found any more or different ones, please drop them in the comment section. Thank you.
If you would like to share your experience with us, drop a comment in the comment section below. Who knows?
We might even read out your comments in future videos. If you want to connect more to us and share more with us, our contact details are in the description box below.
Thanks for stopping by.
And do come again and again. Like, share, subscribe, comment, ask questions, and
We'll see you in our next video.